Chapter 1. A Stranger in the Diner. The coffee pot shook slightly in her hands as she turned to find William Bennett staring at her. His usually steady hazel eyes were shadowed with something she couldn't pin down: regret, maybe, or gratitude, or both. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. William let out a slow breath, dragging a hand through his graying hair. "You don't know what you've done, Sophie. You save a man who's been running from his own life for years." Her stomach knotted. Running from what? He hesitated, then leaned closer, his voice dropping low. "If I tell you, you might wish you'd never crossed paths with me." In a lively pulse of Seattle, where the scent of roasted coffee beans danced with the briny wind off Puget Sound, lived William Bennett. At 52, he was a billionaire, though you'd never guess it from his appearance. His gray-flecked hair was perpetually tousled, and his closet held little more than worn jeans, plain tees, and a threadbare navy jacket he'd owned forever. He drove a rusty Honda Civic, lived in a modest studio apartment, and shunned the flashy trappings of wealth most people tied to his fortune. William was the mastermind behind Bennett Innovations, a tech giant he'd founded decades ago, but he'd long since stepped back, leaving it in the hands of capable executives. To the world, he was just a quiet, middle-aged guy scraping by, polite, unremarkable, and always a little lost in his own head. On a dreary Tuesday afternoon in March 2025, William felt a rare pang of hunger. The rain was relentless, drumming against his apartment window, and he decided to head to a little spot called Daisy's Diner, tucked off a side street near Pike Place Market. The diner was a warm retreat, checkered floors, red vinyl booths, and the soft twang of old rock tunes spilling from a jukebox. William liked it there. No one pestered him, and the food was straightforward, just like him. As he pushed through the glass door, a bell chimed overhead, signaling his arrival. A young waitress named Sophie Hayes greeted him with a bright smile. In her late 20s, Sophie had chestnut hair pulled into a loose ponytail, freckles dusting her cheeks, and an easy kindness that lit up her face. Her faded green apron hung over her uniform, and her sneakers squeaked faintly on the shiny floor as she approached. "Welcome to Daisy's," she said, her voice cheerful as she handed him a creased menu. "Sit wherever you like. I'll be right over." William gave a small nod, murmuring a thanks before sliding into a booth by the window. He watched the rain smear the glass while Sophie moved around the diner, topping off coffee for a trucker at the counter and laughing with an older couple in the corner. There was something real about her, something unguarded, that settled the restless hum in his chest. When Sophie swung back, she fished a notepad from her apron. "What can I get going for you?" "Just a cheeseburger and coffee, black," William said, his tone soft but clear. "You got it," she replied with a quick grin, then darted off to the kitchen. William leaned back, letting the diner's buzz wrap around him. These moments of invisibility were his refuge. No one here knew he could buy the whole street without blinking. But today fell off. A dull throb pulsed behind his eyes, and his hands quivered as he smoothed out a napkin. He chalked it up to a late night and ignored it. 10 minutes later, Sophie returned with a steaming burger and a mug of coffee. "Here you go," she said, setting them down. "Enjoy." William managed a faint smile. "Appreciate it." She nodded and moved on, leaving him to his meal. He bit into the burger, savoring its simplicity, but the ache in his head sharpened. His vision flickered at the edges, and a clammy chill spread across his skin. He dropped the burger, gripping the table to steady himself. Sophie, wiping down the counter, glanced over and frowned. His shoulders were slumped, his face pale. She walked back, concern creasing her brow. "Hey, you okay? You don't look so hot." William tried to answer, but his tongue felt thick. His breath came shallow, and before she could say more, his eyes rolled back. He slid from a booth, hitting the floor with a soft thud. "Oh my God!" Sophie gasped, dropping her rag. She knelt beside him, shaking his arm. "Sir, can you hear me?" Nothing. His chest barely moved. Panic clawed at her, but she shoved it down. Grabbing a glass of water from the table, she trickled some into his mouth. It just ran down his chin. "Come on, wake up," she muttered, splashing his face. Still nothing. Somebody call 911. She yelled, her voice slicing through the diner's hum. Customers fumbled for their phones as Sophie stayed by his side, her hands shaking. Sirens wailed outside within minutes, and paramedics burst in, hoisting William onto a stretcher. Sophie didn't hesitate. She grabbed her jacket and followed. "I'm coming with him," she told the medics, her tone firm. They didn't argue. At Harborview Medical Center, the ER was a storm of noise and motion. Doctors shouted orders as William was wheeled in, his condition slipping fast. Sophie lingered in the waiting area, chewing her nails, her apron still knotted around her waist. She didn't know this guy, but his quiet presence had stuck with her. She couldn't just walk away. A doctor approached, his face tight. "You family?" "No," Sophie admitted. "I'm just the waitress who found him." "Is he going to make it?" "He's losing blood fast. Internal bleeding, probably a ruptured ulcer. We need a transfusion. And we're low on his type, O negative." "You wouldn't happen till I'm O negative," Sophie cut in, rolling up her sleeve. "Take it." The doctor paused, then nodded. "Okay, come with me." An hour later, after giving blood and pacing the sterile halls, Sophie sat by William's bedside in the ICU. He was out cold, hooked to machines that beeped in steady rhythm. She wasn't sure why she stayed. Maybe the adrenaline, maybe the hunch he had no one else. When the doctor returned, he offered a weary smile. "He's stable now. Your blood saved him. He's not out of danger yet, but he's got a shot." Sophie exhaled, relief flooding her. "Good. That's good. There's one more thing," the doctor said. "The bill. It's been a hell of a day. And I hate to ask, but he had no ID on him. We don't know who to charge." Sophie glanced at William, his lined face calm in sleep. Her savings were thin, barely enough for rent, but she couldn't let this land on him. Not now. "I'll cover it," she said quietly. The doctor blinked. "You sure?" "Yeah. Just don't tell him." "Okay." She paid the bill, $10,000, every penny she had, then left, the rain soaking her jacket as she trudged home. 2 days later, William woke to the sterile glow of a hospital room, the beep of a monitor dragging him back. His head pounded, but he was alive. He turned to the doctor, a lanky guy with a clipboard. "What happened?" he rasped. "You collapsed in a diner." The doctor said, "Ruptured ulcer. You're lucky someone got you here fast." "Who?" William pressed, frowning. The doctor hesitated. "A waitress from Daisy's diner. Rode with you in the ambulance. Gave blood to keep you going, and, well, she paid your bill too. Didn't want you to know, but I figured you'd ask." William's jaw dropped. "She what?" "Saved your life," the doctor said with a shrug. "You've got a hell of a guardian angel out there." William sank back, stunned. A stranger, a waitress, had gone all out for him, a guy she didn't even know, and wiped out her own money to boot. It didn't compute. As the haze of meds cleared, a quiet determination settled in. He had to find her. A week later, William stepped back into Daisy's diner, the bell jingling as he entered. His navy jacket damp from the drizzle. Sophie was behind the counter, pouring coffee for a regular. When she spotted him, her face brightened. "Hey, you're back," she said, hurrying over. "How you feeling?" "Better," William replied, his voice warm. "Thanks to you." Sophie blushed, brushing it off. "Oh, it was nothing. Just glad you're okay." "No," William said firmly, stepping closer. "It wasn't nothing. You saved my life, gave your blood, paid my bills. I don't even know where to start thanking you." Her eyes widened. "You weren't supposed to know about that." "Well, I do," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "And I owe you an explanation." Sophie tilted her head, curious. "Explanation?" "My name's William Bennett," he started, watching her reaction. Well, I'm a billionaire. Built a tech company years back. I don't show it off, hate the spotlight, but I've got more money than I'll ever use. And what you did, it's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me." Sophie's mouth fell open. "You're a billionaire?" "Like the William Bennett." He chuckled. "Guilty." She laughed, a mix of shock and delight. "You sure don't look the part." "That's the point," he said, then reached into his pocket. He handed her an envelope. "This is for you." Sophie opened it, her breath hitching. Inside was a check for $100,000, Not a typo, but a life-altering amount. William, I can't. You can, he cut in, and you will. You didn't think twice about helping me when I was just some guy. This isn't a handout. It's gratitude. Tears pricked her eyes as she gripped the check. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep being you, William replied. The world could use more of that. Sophie nodded, swiping at her cheek. I will. Thank you, William. He tipped his head, then turned to go but paused at the door. Oh, and Sophie? Next time I'm here, the burger's on me. She laughed, and for the first time in years, William felt a flicker inside, a connection he hadn't realized he'd lost. As he stepped into the rain, he knew this was just the start.